The glass doors of the boardroom didn't just separate the hallway from the executives. They separated the past from the future. Inside, Alaric Sterling was laughing, raising a glass of scotch to a room full of men who had helped him destroy his wife's reputation. They called her the housewife, the charity case, and yesterday's news. They thought she was there to beg for a pension adjustment. But as Vivian Banks smoothed the skirt of her navy dress and placed her hand on the cold steel handle, she wasn't trembling. They forgot that before she was Alaric's wife, she was the one who wrote the code that built their empire. And she wasn't walking in to beg. She was walking in to fire them all. The rain in Manhattan didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Vivian Banks watched the droplets race down the tinted window of the town car, distorting the lights of the towering glass monolith that was the headquarters of Sterling Dynamics. "We're here, Ms. Banks," the driver said softly, eyeing her in the rearview mirror with a look that hovered somewhere between pity and curiosity. "Thank you, Thomas." Vivian didn't move immediately. She stared up at the building, 42 stories of steel and arrogance. 10 years ago, she and Alaric had sketched the logo on a napkin in a cramped diner in Brooklyn. Back then, it wasn't Sterling Dynamics. It was just the project. They were partners, equals. Now? She was the cautionary tale, the first wife, the one who couldn't handle the pressure and lost her mind. That was the narrative Alaric had spun anyway. It was effective. When you control $1 billion media budget, you can paint anyone as hysterical. During the divorce proceedings 3 years ago, Alaric's legal team, led by the shark-like Bradley C. Hilliard, had systematically dismantled her. They cited her emotional instability following the miscarriage. They used her grief against her to strip her of her voting rights, her board seat, and her dignity. She walked away with a lump sum settlement that looked generous to the public, but was pennies compared to the company's valuation, and a small, forgotten subsidiary called Echo Labs that the board considered a dead asset, a money pit for failed patents. "Are you ready for this, Vivian?" The voice beside her was calm, grounded. Harrison Cole sat adjusting his cufflinks. He was the only lawyer in New York who would take her call after Alaric blacklisted her. He wasn't flashy. He didn't have billboards in Times Square. But Harrison knew corporate law like a surgeon knows anatomy. "They think I'm coming to sign the waiver, Harrison," Vivian said, her voice steady. "They think I'm finally letting go of the honorary title so Alaric can merge with Oakhaven Tech." "Let them think it," Harrison replied, handing her a leather portfolio. "Arrogance is their blind spot. Alaric is so busy looking at the merger price, he hasn't read the bylaws of Echo Labs since 2019. Vivian took the portfolio. It felt heavy, not with paper, but with intent. "Let's go spoil a party." She stepped out of the car. The flash of a paparazzo's camera caught her off guard. Of course, Alaric would have leaked that she was coming. He wanted a public humiliation. He wanted the shareholders to see the broken ex-wife signing away her rights, proving that he was the benevolent victor. She walked through the revolving doors, her heels clicking a sharp, rhythmic cadence on the marble floor. The lobby was bustling, but silence rippled outward from her entrance like a shockwave. Heads turned. Whispers started behind hands. "Is that her? She looks older. I heard she's living in a studio apartment in Queens. Alaric's new fiancée is upstairs. This is going to be a bloodbath." Vivian kept her chin high, her face a mask of cool indifference. She approached the security desk. The guard, a new hire who clearly didn't recognize the woman whose portrait used to hang behind his head, looked at her ID skeptically. "Name?" "Vivian Banks. I'm here for the board of directors meeting." The guard typed slowly, then frowned. I have an Alaric Sterling listed as chairman, and an Isabella Ricci. I don't see a Banks on the active board list." "Check the guest list," Harrison interjected smoothly. "Under legacy shareholders." The guard scrolled down, smirked slightly, and printed a badge. It didn't say director, it didn't say founder, it said visitor. Vivian took it, peeling the backing off and sticking it to her distinctive Chanel lapel. It was a petty insult, one of Alaric's signatures. "Legacy shareholder," she muttered as they walked toward the elevators. "He really enjoys twisting the knife." "He thinks the knife is in your hand," Harrison murmured as the elevator doors dinged open. "He doesn't realize he's holding it by the blade." The elevator ride to the 42nd floor was silent. Vivian watched the floor numbers climb. 10, 20, 30. Her heart wasn't racing. That was the strange part. 3 years ago, standing in this elevator would have induced a panic attack. But grief, when processed, hardens into something durable. She wasn't sad about losing Alaric anymore. She was just done with the lies. The doors opened to the penthouse level. The receptionist, a young woman named Chloe, who used to bring Vivian coffee, looked up and turned pale. Miss Banks. Hello, Chloe. You can tell them I've arrived." They're in the preliminary session," Mr. Sterling said not to disturb until the vote. "The vote requires all shareholders with Class B standing to be present," Harrison said. "We're going in." Chloe looked like she wanted to dive under her desk, but she didn't stop them. Vivian walked past the reception, down the long corridor lined with awards for technology she had designed. At the end of the hall, the double mahogany doors stood closed. Laughter drifted through them. Loud, boisterous, male laughter. Vivian paused. She heard Alaric's voice. "So I told her, Vivian, take the beach house. You need the rest." And she looked at me with those doe eyes and just signed. God, it was pathetic. But hey, it cleared the cap table for Oakhaven. More laughter. Harrison looked at Vivian. He raised an eyebrow. "Shall we?" Vivian didn't knock. She pushed the doors open with both hands. The boardroom of Sterling Dynamics was a masterpiece of intimidation. A 30-foot table made of reclaimed black walnut dominated the center, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a panoramic view of the storm clouds gathering over the Hudson River. 12 men and 1 woman sat around the table. At the head sat Alaric Sterling. He looked exactly as the magazines portrayed him, tanned, fit, with silver fox hair and a smile that cost $20,000 in dental work. He was leaning back, one arm draped over the chair of the woman next to him, Isabella Ricci. Isabella was beautiful, 20 years younger than Vivian, and currently wearing a diamond tennis bracelet that Vivian's grandmother had left her. Alaric had won it in the settlement by claiming it was a marital asset purchased with company funds. Seeing it on Isabella's wrist was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that Vivian had to swallow instantly. The laughter died instantly. 13 pairs of eyes snapped to the door. Alaric didn't stand up. He just swirled the amber liquid in his glass and smiled, a shark smelling blood. "Vivian," he drawled. "You're late. We almost started the toast without you." "I wasn't aware this was a cocktail party, Alaric," Vivian said, her voice carrying clearly across the room. The agenda said, "Emergency board meeting regarding Oakhaven merger." "It's a celebration, darling," Isabella chimed in, her voice syrupy sweet. She patted the empty chair at the far end of the table, the distinct kids' table position. "We're celebrating the future. But it's so sweet of you to come and observe." Simon Rostover, the CFO, snickered. Simon was a weasel of a man who had embezzled small amounts for years, until Alaric caught him and turned him into a loyal lapdog through blackmail. "Did you bring cookies, Vivian? I remember you said you were getting into baking after the breakdown." The room chuckled. This was their sport, baiting the ex-wife. Vivian ignored Simon. She walked to the empty chair but didn't sit. Harrison stood silently behind her, placing his briefcase on the table with a heavy thud that echoed slightly. "I'm here to discuss the proxy statement," Vivian said, locking eyes with Alaric. "Specifically, the dissolution of the subsidiary assets required to finalize the Oakhaven deal." Alaric sighed, a theatrical sound of boredom. He finally stood up, buttoning his Italian suit jacket. "Vivian, look, I know it's hard. I know you feel left out. But we sent you the papers. You have a 2% non-voting stake in the holding company. We're buying you out today. That's the agenda. We give you a check for $5 million, which is generous, frankly, and you sign the waiver, allowing us to dissolve Echo Labs. It's a formality." He walked around the table, approaching her like a disappointed teacher. "You don't need a lawyer for this," Alaric said, glancing dismissively at Harrison. "It's a win for you. You can go back to whatever it is you do. Knitting? Therapy? Architecture," Vivian corrected coldly. "Right. Designing garden sheds. Look, take the money. Isabella and I are trying to be kind here." "Kind?" Vivian repeated. She looked at Isabella. "Is that what you call wearing my grandmother's bracelet, Isabella? Kindness?" Isabella flushed pink but covered it with a sneer. "Alaric bought it for me. Possession is 9/10 of the law, sweetie." "Actually," Harrison spoke up, his voice dry, "possession implies legal ownership, but we can circle back to the jewelry. Let's talk about Echo Labs." Alaric rolled his eyes. "Jesus, Harrison, it's a shell company. It holds the patents for that failed solar project Vivian was obsessed with in 2018. It hasn't generated a dime in revenue. Oakhaven wants clean books. They want Echo gone. Why are we dragging this out?" "Because," Vivian said, pulling a document from Harrison's portfolio, "you can't dissolve Echo Labs. I'm the CEO, Vivian. I can dissolve whatever I want." "Not this," she said. She slid a single piece of paper down the long walnut table. It spun smoothly and stopped right in front of Simon Rostova. Simon picked it up, adjusting his glasses. He squinted at the text. It's just the incorporation charter for Echo." "Read Article 4, Section B," Vivian commanded. Simon read it. His brow furrowed. He read it again. The color began to drain from his face. He looked up at Alaric, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "What?" Alaric snapped. "What is it, Simon?" "Alaric." Simon's voice trembled. This says the Class A shares of Sterling Dynamics, the voting shares, are collateralized against the intellectual property held by Echo Labs." "What the hell does that mean in English?" Alaric barked. Vivian answered, her voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly serious. "It means, Alaric, that when we founded this company, we wrote a poison pill into the bylaws to prevent a hostile takeover. We tied the voting rights of the parent company to the integrity of the R&D division. You were so busy forcing me out during the divorce that you dumped Echo Labs on me, because you thought it was worthless." She leaned forward, palms on the table. "You gave me Echo Labs to avoid paying me cash, but in doing so, you gave me the collateral. If you try to dissolve Echo Labs without the sole owner's permission, the Class A voting rights of Sterling Dynamics automatically revert to the owner of Echo." Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. The rain lashed against the windows, sounding like applause. Alaric laughed nervously. That's ridiculous. That's not enforceable. That was 10 years ago." "It's Delaware General Corporation law," Harrison stated, "and it was reaffirmed in your divorce decree. Page 402. Respondent, Mr. Sterling, relinquishes all claims to Echo Labs and its attached liabilities and privileges. Alaric stared at Vivian. The arrogance was flickering, replaced by the first spark of genuine fear. "So," Vivian said, finally pulling out the chair and sitting down at the head of the table, opposite Alaric. "I'm not here to sign a waiver, Alaric. I'm here to activate the clause." "You can't," Alaric hissed. "We have a merger to sign in an hour. The Oakhaven CEO is flying in." "Then he'll be meeting with the majority shareholder," Vivian smiled, "which, as of this morning, is me." She turned to the board, looking at the faces of the men who had mocked her minutes ago. "Now, the first item on the agenda is a review of executive competency. Simon, let's talk about those accounting errors in the Q3 report, shall we?" Alaric's face was a kaleidoscope of rage. The tanned confidence was gone, replaced by a blotchy red flush that crept up from his collar. "Get Hilliard in here," Alaric barked at the room at large. "Now, I pay that man a fortune to prevent exactly this kind of nonsense. Mr. Hilliard is already on the line for the merger prep," a junior board member named Greg stammered, tapping frantically on his tablet. He projected the call onto the massive screen at the end of the room. Bradley C. Hilliard's face appeared, pixelated but imposing. He was sitting in a leather chair in his office, 3 floors down. "Alaric, I thought we were holding until the Oakhaven team arrived. Why is the video feed on?" "Bradley, look at the document Simon just forwarded to you," Alaric yelled, pointing a shaking finger at Vivian. "My ex-wife is sitting in my chair, claiming she owns the voting rights because of Echo Labs." On the screen, Hilliard frowned. He adjusted his reading glasses. Silence stretched for a painful 30 seconds. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the rain. "Well," Alaric demanded, "tell her she's delusional." Hilliard took off his glasses. He looked tired. "Alaric, I warned you about the asset split in 2023. I told you specifically to strip the legacy bylaws from the Echo Charter before transferring it." "You said it was a dead asset." "I said it was financially dead. I didn't check the governance structure because you insisted on rushing the settlement to get Isabella on the company jet for Cannes." Alaric froze. Every eye in the room shifted to Isabella, who shrank back into her chair, suddenly finding the grain of the walnut table fascinating. "So what are you saying, Bradley?" Alaric whispered. "I'm saying," Hilliard sighed, "that under the current bylaws, if the parent company attempts to liquidate the subsidiary against the owner's will, the subsidiary's equity converts to senior preferred stock with super voting rights. It's a dead hand poison pill. You put it there yourself, Alaric, in 2014 to stop Microsoft from buying us out." "Fix it," Alaric roared. "I can't fix a signed contract, Alaric. Ms. Banks is effectively the acting chairwoman until the liquidation attempt is formally withdrawn and she agrees to step down." Vivian didn't smile. Smiling would imply this was a game. This was an execution. "Thank you, Bradley," Vivian said, her voice cutting through the noise. "You can bill us for that advice. Now disconnect." The screen went black. Vivian turned her gaze to Simon Rostover, the CFO. The man was sweating so profusely his glasses were sliding down his nose. "Now, as I was saying," Vivian opened the leather portfolio Harrison had placed on the table. She pulled out a thick red binder. Item 1. Executive competency. She slid the binder toward the center of the table. "Simon," she said softly, "do you know what Project Mirage is?" Simon's cup of water slipped from his hand, shattering on the table. Ice and water soaked the papers in front of him. I don't know what you're talking about." "Harrison, if you would," Vivian nodded to her lawyer. Harrison stepped forward, reciting from memory. "Project Mirage appears on the books as a consulting firm based in the Cayman Islands. Sterling Dynamics has paid Mirage $12 million over the last 3 years for logistical support. However, a forensic audit of the routing numbers shows that Mirage is owned by a shell company registered to a Miss Daria Rostova. Your sister, Simon. A gasp went around the room. This wasn't just corporate maneuvering. This was crime. "That's a lie," Simon squeaked. "We have the bank transfers," Vivian said. "We have the emails from your corporate account approving the invoices. And we have a confession from your sister, who really didn't want to go to prison for wire fraud." Simon looked at Alaric, pleading. "Alaric, tell her. You knew. You told me to move the money to cover the bribe for the zoning commission on the new headquarters." The room erupted. Alaric slammed his fist on the table. "Shut up, Simon, you idiot." "Oh," Vivian raised an eyebrow. "So it wasn't just embezzlement. It was bribery, racketeering." She looked at the other board members, men she had known for a decade, men who had attended her wedding. "Gentlemen," Vivian said calmly, "you are all fiduciaries. You are liable. Unless, of course, you vote to terminate the CFO immediately for cause and authorize a full external audit." "I motion to terminate," Greg shouted immediately, desperate to save his own skin. "Seconded," yelled another board member, a man named Paul who was currently texting his own lawyer under the table. "All in favor?" Vivian asked. 11 hands shot up. Only Alaric and Simon kept their hands down. "Motion carries," Vivian said. She looked at the security guard who was still standing by the door, confused. "Escort Mr. Rostova out and call the police. I believe they're waiting in the lobby." "You can't do this!" Simon screamed as the guard grabbed his arm. "Alaric, do something!" Alaric stood paralyzed as his CFO was dragged out of the room. The reality was setting in. The housewife hadn't just come to disrupt the meeting. She had come with ammunition. "Who's next?" Vivian asked, turning her gaze to the head of marketing, a man who had famously tweeted that Vivian was dead weight during the divorce. She tapped the red binder. "Shall we talk about the ad spend in Vegas, Peter?" By 10:45 a.m., the boardroom resembled a battlefield. 3 executives had been fired. 2 others had resigned for personal reasons and fled the room. The remaining board members sat in terrified silence, their postures perfect, like school children afraid of the teacher. Alaric Sterling was slumped in his chair. He looked 10 years older than he had an hour ago. He poured himself another scotch, his hand trembling visibly. "Are you done?" Alaric rasped. "You've gutted the C-suite. You've embarrassed me. You've proven you can burn the house down. Are you happy, Vivian?" "I'm not burning the house down, Alaric," Vivian said, closing the red binder. "I'm fumigating it." "It doesn't matter," Alaric sneered, trying to regain some footing. "You can fire everyone, but you can't stop the merger. Oakhaven is buying Sterling Dynamics. They're buying the brand, my brand. Without me, the stock tanks. You need me to close this deal. Is that so? Yes. And Oakhaven wants Echo Labs dissolved because it's a liability. If you block the dissolution, the deal dies. If the deal dies, the stock drops 40%. You lose money too, Vivian. Your 2% stake becomes worthless." He laughed, a bitter, jagged sound. "That's the irony, isn't it? You have the power to destroy us, but only if you destroy yourself. It's a suicide vest. You won't blow it." Vivian stood up and walked to the window. The storm outside was breaking. A beam of sunlight pierced the clouds, illuminating the Hudson. "You really never understood what I did you, Alaric?" she asked quietly. "You thought I was just the girl who made the coffee and fixed the HTML code while you did the big picture thinking. You were a good coder," Alaric shrugged, "but you had no vision." "I had vision." Vivian turned back. "I saw what was coming. While you were obsessing over media acquisitions and celebrity partnerships, I was looking at energy." "Energy?" Isabella spoke up for the first time in an hour. Her voice was small. Like batteries? Not just batteries, Vivian said. Does the name Project Ether ring a bell? Alaric frowned. I saw it on a budget report years ago. I cut the funding. You tried to cut the funding, Vivian corrected. But because Echo Labs was a separate entity, I funded it with my own savings, even during the divorce. Even when I had to sell my jewelry, I kept the servers running. So what? Alaric scoffed. You have a science project. Congratulations. Harrison. Vivian nodded. Harrison connected his laptop to the main screen. A schematic appeared. It was complex, elegant, and revolutionary. 2 weeks ago, Vivian explained, Echo Labs received the final patent approval for a solid-state graphene conductor. It increases data transmission speeds by 500%, while reducing energy consumption by 80%. It's the holy grail for AI data centers. The room went silent. Even the terrified board members leaned in. That's impossible, the CTO, a man named David, whispered. Google has been trying to crack that for 5 years. We cracked it, Vivian said. And because you insisted on giving me Echo Labs to avoid paying alimony, I own it. 100% of it. She walked back to the table and leaned over Alaric. Now here is the twist, Alaric. Oakhaven isn't buying Sterling Dynamics for your media brand. Your media brand is dying. Cable is dead. Streaming is saturated. She tapped the table. I had a private lunch with Preston O'Neill, the CEO of Oakhaven, 3 days ago. Alaric's eyes widened. You spoke to Preston? He told me why he wanted the merger. He didn't want your magazines. He didn't want your TV channels. He wanted access to the Sterling patent library because his analysts suspected someone inside Sterling was working on next-gen conductors. He just didn't know it was in the trash subsidiary you threw away. Alaric looked like he was going to be sick. He's not coming here to sign a deal with you, Alaric, Vivian said mercilessly. He's coming to sign a licensing deal with me. Sterling Dynamics was just the wrapper he had to buy to get the candy inside. No, Alaric whispered. I built this company. You built a facade, Vivian said, and you spent 10 years painting over the cracks. But today, the paint peels off. Just then, the double doors opened. Chloe, the receptionist, peeked in. She looked terrified, but also strangely excited. Miss Banks? Mr. Sterling, she said. Mr. Preston O'Neill is here. He says he's 5 minutes early. Vivian straightened her blazer. She looked at Alaric, who was slumped, defeated, a king sitting on a cardboard throne. Show him in, Chloe, Vivian said. She looked at the empty chair at the head of the table, Alaric's chair. Alaric, she said, you're in my seat. Alaric looked up. He looked at Isabella, hoping for support. Isabella was already taking off the diamond bracelet. Actually, Alaric, Isabella said, her voice trembling but calculating. I think I should go wait in the car. This seems business-related. Isabella, Alaric croaked. I can't be associated with a fraud investigation, baby. My brand is very sensitive. She stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked out without looking back. Vivian watched her go, then turned back to her ex-husband. Move, Alaric. Slowly, painfully, Alaric Sterling pushed his chair back. He stood up, his legs shaky. He moved to the side, standing where the petitioners usually stood. Vivian Banks sat down at the head of the table. She placed her hands on the black walnut wood. It felt warm. It felt right. Harrison, she said, let the CEO of Oakhaven in. We have a company to save. The door swung open, and Preston O'Neill walked in. He was a bear of a man, broad-shouldered with a shock of white hair and eyes that scanned the room like a predator assessing a herd. He didn't look like a tech billionaire. he looked like a retired linebacker. He was followed by an entourage of 4 assistants, all tapping on tablets. Alaric, sensing his last chance to salvage his dignity, stepped forward from the sidelines. He smoothed his suit, put on his best media smile, and extended a hand. "Preston, so good to see you. Apologies for the disruption. We had some housekeeping to attend to, but we are ready to finalize the merger." Preston O'Neill didn't stop walking. He didn't even look at Alaric's extended hand. He walked straight past the founder of Sterling Dynamics, as if Alaric were a potted plant. He stopped at the head of the table. He looked down at Vivian Banks. For a long second, the room held its breath. Then, Preston grinned, a genuine, warm grin. "Vivian," he boomed, "I see you finally took the advice I gave you at lunch." "Hello, Preston," Vivian said, not rising. She gestured to the empty seat to her right, the seat of honor. "Please, sit. We have a lot to discuss." Alaric stood frozen in the middle of the room, his hand still half extended, his face burning with a humiliation so deep it felt like a physical burn. "Preston?" Alaric stammered. I'm the chairman. We have the papers prepared for the—" Preston finally turned to look at Alaric. The warmth vanished from his eyes, replaced by cold steel. "You're the chairman of a media company that hasn't made a profit in 3 years, Alaric," Preston said bluntly. "I didn't fly from Palo Alto to buy a failing magazine publisher. I came here for the technology. And since Ms. Banks just informed my legal team that Ecolabs holds the exclusive IP rights to the ether conductor, well, that makes you a middleman. And I hate middlemen." Alaric looked at Vivian. "You told him?" "I told him the truth," Vivian said. "Something you haven't done since 2015. She turned her attention back to Preston. "Preston, the terms we discussed on Tuesday are no longer viable." Preston raised an eyebrow. "Oh? I offered $2 billion for the acquisition." That seemed fair. "That was when I was a silent partner," Vivian said, leaning back. "That was before I conducted an internal audit this morning and found that the current board has exposed the company to massive liability through fraud, embezzlement, and gross negligence." She gestured to the red binder. "If Oak Haven buys Sterling Dynamics today, you buy our lawsuits. You buy the SEC investigation that I am personally triggering this afternoon." Preston whistled low. "You play hardball, Vivian. So what's the play?" "I walk away." "No," Vivian said. "You don't buy Sterling Dynamics. Ecolabs buys Sterling Dynamics." The room gasped. Even Harrison, her lawyer, looked surprised for a fraction of a second before masking it. "Excuse me?" Alaric shouted, stepping forward. "Ecolabs has no capital. You can't buy us." "We have the capital if Preston backs us," Vivian said calmly. "Preston, you invest the $2 billion directly into Ecolabs. I use a portion of that to buy out the controlling interest of Sterling Dynamics at a distressed asset price, which is exactly what it is right now. We clean house, settle the debts, and you get exclusive licensing to the ether technology for 10 years. But I stay on as CEO. I run the ship, and the Sterling name goes away." Preston tapped his finger on the table. He looked at Alaric, sweating and desperate. He looked at the terrified board members. Then he looked at Vivian, calm and composed in the eye of the storm. "A reverse merger," Preston mused. "Funded by the vendor. It's aggressive. It's risky." "It's the only way you get the conductor," Vivian said. "Otherwise, I take Ecolabs private, and I sell the tech to Google next week." Preston laughed. It was a loud, hearty sound that broke the tension. "God, I love engineers," Preston said. "They don't know how to lie." He extended his hand across the table. "Deal. But I want a seat on the new board." "Granted," Vivian shook his hand, But only one vote, Preston. This is my company. Understood. Alaric stumbled back, hitting the wall. No, you can't. This is illegal. I own 40% of the stock. Actually, Harrison spoke up, checking a notification on his phone. The market just opened. News of the CFO's arrest, which happened in the lobby 3 minutes ago, just hit Bloomberg. Sterling Dynamics stock is currently in freefall. It's down 18% in 10 minutes. By the time we sign this deal, Alaric, your stock options will be worth less than the paper they're printed on, especially since they are leveraged against your personal loans. Alaric slid down the wall, sitting on the floor. He pulled at his tie, gasping for air. The empire he had built on smoke and mirrors wasn't just crumbling. It had already turned to dust. "Get him out of here," Vivian said, her voice devoid of malice, just full of business. "We have work to do." 2 security guards stepped forward. They lifted Alaric Sterling, the man who had once been Man of the Year, by his armpits. He didn't fight. He just stared at Vivian, his eyes wide with the realization that he had created his own destroyer. As they dragged him out, Vivian didn't watch. She was already pulling a new document from her portfolio. "Now," she said to the remaining board members, "who wants to keep their job? Because the interview starts now." The elevator ride down was the longest of Alaric Sterling's life. He wasn't in the private executive lift with the velvet bench. He was in the service elevator, sandwiched between the 2 security guards and a cart full of cleaning supplies. The smell of lemon bleach stung his nose. When the doors opened to the lobby, he expected to be able to slip out the back. But the lobby was a zoo. The news of the board meeting had leaked. Maybe Vivian did it. Maybe Harrison. Maybe it was just the smell of blood in the water. Reporters, photographers, and camera crews were swarming to the entrance. "Mr. Sterling! Mr. Sterling! Is it true the FBI is upstairs? Alaric, did you know about the embezzlement? Is it true your ex-wife has taken control of the company?" Flashbulbs popped like strobe lights, blinding him. Alaric put his hand up to shield his face, a gesture that would end up on the front page of the New York Post the next morning, with the headline, "Sterling Silver Tarnished." He pushed through the crowd, looking for his driver, but the Blacktown car wasn't there. His phone buzzed, a text from his driver, Thomas. "Sorry, Mr. Sterling. Ms. Banks called. She said the company car is for authorized employees only. I've been instructed to return the vehicle to the garage. Good luck." Alaric stared at the screen. He was stranded on the sidewalk in the rain. "Alaric!" He turned. It was Isabella. She was standing under the awning of the coffee shop next door, looking frantic. She wasn't wearing the diamond bracelet anymore. "Isabella," Alaric exhaled, rushing toward her. "Thank God. We need to go. Call an Uber. We'll go to the Hamptons' house. We can figure this out." Isabella took a step back. She looked at him with a mixture of disgust and panic. "The Hamptons' house?" she shrilled. "Alaric, I just checked Zillow. That house is in a trust owned by the company. If Vivian took the company, she owns the house." "We'll fight it in court," Alaric pleaded. "I still have money. I have the offshore accounts." "Do you?" Isabella snapped. "Or is that just another story, like the private jet that turned out to be a rental?" She looked at the cameras turning toward them. She made a decision instantly. "Don't touch me," she said loudly, for the benefit of the press. "I had no idea. I'm a victim here. He lied to me too." "Isabella?" Alaric reached for her. "Get away from me." She shoved him. It wasn't a hard shove, but Alaric was weak. He stumbled back, slipping on the wet pavement. He landed hard in a puddle of dirty rainwater. The cameras clicked furiously. Click, 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 click. Alaric Sterling, soaking wet, sitting in the gutter, looked up at the woman he had left Vivian for. Isabella was already walking away, hailing a taxi, holding her purse over her face. He was alone. Up on the 42nd floor, Vivian Banks stood by the window. She couldn't see the specific details of the drama on the sidewalk, just the swarm of ants below. "He's gone," Harrison said, standing beside her. "Security confirmed he's off the premises. And the police?" "They're waiting for him at his apartment. Apparently, Simon Rostova is singing like a canary. He's implicating Alaric in everything to get a plea deal." Vivian nodded. She felt a strange sensation in her chest. She waited for the guilt. She waited for the lingering sadness of destroying the man she had once loved. But it didn't come. All she felt was the clean, cool sensation of a balance sheet finally zeroing out. "Harrison," she said. "Yes, Miss Banks. Order lunch for the staff, the good stuff, from the Italian place down the street, and send a memo to HR. I want all frozen pensions reinstated immediately. That will cost a fortune, Vivian." "We can afford it," she said, looking at the grey sky that was finally beginning to turn blue. "We're $1 billion company now." 6 months later, the jackhammers had finally stopped. For 3 months, the 42nd floor of the building, formerly known as Sterling Tower, had sounded like a war zone. But the noise wasn't destruction, it was surgery. Vivian Banks stood in the center of what used to be the executive sanctuary. Under Alaric's reign, this area had been a dark maze of mahogany walls, velvet ropes, and security checkpoints designed to keep the employees away from the leadership. It was a fortress of ego. Now the walls were gone. The morning sun flooded the entire floor through floor-to-ceiling glass. The heavy, oppressive wood had been replaced by sleek steel, white oak, and open air. The smell of stale cigar smoke and expensive cologne was gone, replaced by the scent of fresh espresso and ozone from the server cooling systems. And the name on the wall behind the reception desk had changed. The ostentatious gold cursive of Sterling Dynamics had been pried off, leaving ghost marks that were quickly painted over. In its place, mounted in brushed matte silver, was a single word: Echo. It was a nod to the subsidiary Alaric had thrown away. It was a reminder that the smallest sound, if focused correctly, can shatter glass. "Ms. Banks?" Vivian turned. Chloe, who had been promoted from the terrified receptionist to the chief of staff, stood holding a tablet. She looked different, too. The nervous hunch was gone. She wore a tailored suit and walked with the brisk confidence of someone who knew her job was secure. "Good morning, Chloe. Is the feed live?" "Yes, ma'am. The NASDAQ opening bell ceremony is streaming in the main hub. The staff is gathering now. They want to see you ring it." Vivian smiled, a soft, genuine expression that never would have cracked her face 6 months ago. "I'm not ringing it, Chloe. The engineering lead, Sarah, is ringing it. She built the Ether prototype. She deserves the glory." Chloe beamed. "I'll tell her." "Oh, and Mr. O'Neill is in conference room B. He flew in early. He says he brought donuts, but I suspect he actually brought the Q2 acquisition targets." "Preston never brings just donuts," Vivian mused. "Thank you, Chloe." Vivian walked through the office. As she passed the rows of desks, heads turned, but they didn't turn with the fearful snap that used to accompany Alaric's presence. There was no silence, no sudden cessation of typing. People nodded, smiled, or simply kept working. She passed the break room. A large screen was playing the news. The banner at the bottom read, "Echo Technologies stock soars. 10% following Google licensing deal." But the image on the screen wasn't a graph. It was a picture of a woman in a trench coat, hiding her face behind a designer handbag as she ran out of a courthouse. Vivian paused. "Turn that up a bit, please, David," she said to a junior developer getting coffee. "Sure, Ms. Banks." The volume rose. The reporter's voice was breathless. Disgraced socialite Isabella Ricci was seen leaving Manhattan Criminal Court today after pleading no contest to charges of receipt of stolen property. Ricci, who was briefly engaged to former CEO Alaric Sterling, claimed she was unaware the jewelry and assets she received were purchased with embezzled company funds. The judge, however, ordered the seizure of all assets, including her Upper East Side apartment. Ricci declined to comment, though sources say she is moving back to her parents' home in Ohio. Vivian watched the footage. Isabella looked smaller than she remembered. The arrogance was stripped away, leaving just a frightened woman who had bet on the wrong horse. "Karma has a way of balancing the ledger," a deep voice rumbled beside her. Vivian turned to see Preston O'Neill leaning against the doorframe, a pink donut box in one hand. "She didn't know about the embezzlement, Preston," Vivian said quietly. "She was just greedy. Ignorance isn't a crime, but it is a liability." "In business, it's a death sentence," Preston agreed. He offered her a donut. "Maple bacon?" "No, thank you. I have the Forbes interview in 20 minutes. I don't want sugar on my blouse." "Ah, yes, Forbes. The architect of the new age. That's the headline they're pitching." Preston walked with her toward the conference room. "You know, Alaric sent me a letter from prison." Vivian stiffened slightly. "Did he ask for money?" "He asked for a character reference for his appeal." Preston chuckled darkly. "He claims he was manipulated by Simon Rostover. He claims he was the victim of a rogue CFO." "Alaric always was the hero of his own tragedy," Vivian said. "Did you reply?" "My legal team sent a standard cease and desist. I don't talk to felons who lose me money." Preston stopped at the door of the conference room. "But he's obsessed with you, Vivian. He can't understand how you did it. He still thinks you just got lucky with the patent." "Let him think that," Vivian said, smoothing her lapel. "Luck is just preparation meeting opportunity. He never prepared, so he never saw the opportunity." She entered the conference room. The Forbes journalist, a sharp-eyed woman named Eleanor, was already setting up a voice recorder. "Miss Banks!" Eleanor stood up, shaking her hand. "Thank you for the time. I know things are chaotic with the market opening." "Controlled chaos, Eleanor. The best kind." They sat down. The view behind Vivian was spectacular. The Manhattan skyline, washed clean by the summer rain. "Let's start with the elephant in the room," Eleanor began. 6 months ago, you were dismissed by the board as a legacy shareholder with no voting power. Today, you are the CEO of the highest performing tech stock of the year. The previous board is either indicted or fired. Your ex-husband is serving 4 to 6 years for fraud. Critics call it a corporate revenge tragedy. How do you describe it? Vivian clasped her hands on the table. She looked at the recorder. "Revenge is emotional, Eleanor. Revenge is about making someone else feel pain. What I did wasn't revenge. It was a correction." "A correction?" "Sterling Dynamics was a sick organism," Vivian explained, her voice steady. "It was infected with corruption, ego, and short-term thinking. Alaric Sterling built a company designed to make him look rich. I rebuilt a company designed to make the world work better. The fact that he had to fall for that to happen wasn't malice. It was gravity." "You reinstated the pensions of the employees Alaric fired," Eleanor noted, glancing at her notes. "That cost the company $40 million in the first quarter. Wall Street hated that move." "Wall Street looks at the next quarter." "I look at the next decade," Vivian retorted. "Those engineers built the foundation of this company. You don't build a skyscraper by starving the people who pour the concrete. Loyalty is an asset class, Eleanor, and right now my turnover rate is 0. That 40 million bought me a workforce that would walk through fire for this company. Eleanor nodded, impressed. And the name? Echo? Vivian smiled. For 10 years my voice was just an echo in this room. I would say something, and it would be ignored until a man repeated it louder. I named it Echo to remind every woman, every quiet engineer, every overlooked employee that an echo eventually returns, and when it does, it's amplified. The interview lasted an hour. When it was over, Vivian felt a strange sense of lightness. For years she had carried the weight of the narrative Alaric had spun, the crazy ex-wife, the charity case. Today, she had finally written over it with permanent ink. As Eleanor packed up, Chloe knocked on the glass door again. Her expression was somber this time. "Ms. Banks, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this just arrived via courier. It's marked personal and confidential from the correctional facility in upstate." She handed Vivian a thick, brown envelope. The room went quiet. Preston, who had been listening to the interview from the corner, stood up. "Do you want us to leave?" "No," Vivian said. She took the envelope. It felt heavy. "It's fine." She slit the top open. Inside, there wasn't just a letter. There was a photo. It was an old Polaroid, slightly faded. It was taken in a diner in Brooklyn, 12 years ago. It showed a young Alaric and a young Vivian, huddled over a napkin, smiling with the delirious exhaustion of two people who had just decided to start a company. Clipped to the photo was a letter, written on yellow legal pad paper. The handwriting was jagged, the script of a man whose hands were shaking. "Vivian, I saw the magazine's cover in the library here. The woman who rewired the world. You look good. Stronger than I remember. Or maybe I just never looked closely enough. It's loud in here. I can't sleep. I spend my nights replaying that board meeting. I replay the moment you slid that red binder across the table. I keep looking for the moment I could have stopped it. The moment I could have been smarter. But then I look at this photo. I found it in my wallet when they booked me. They let me keep it. I look at it, and I realize the mistake wasn't the embezzlement. It wasn't the affair with Isabella. It wasn't ignoring the bylaws. The mistake was thinking I was the genius. I remember that night in the diner. I remember I wanted to call the company Sterling Media. You said no. You said, let's call it something that moves. You came up with Dynamics. You wrote the code. You structured the initial LLC. I spent 10 years convincing the world I was the sun, and you were just a moon reflecting my light. But I'm sitting in a cage now, and the lights are out, and you're out there, shining. Hilliard visited me yesterday. He says you bought the Hamptons house from the liquidation auction. He says you turned it into a retreat for female coding students. That's funny. I always hated having people over. I hope they track mud on the white carpets. I guess I'm writing to ask, why? You could have just taken the settlement. You could have walked away rich and let me crash the company on my own. Why did you have to be the one to push the button? I think I know the answer. Because you loved the company more than you hated me. Congratulations on the IPO. Don't visit me. Alaric Vivian read the letter twice. She traced the edge of the Polaroid with her thumb. She remembered that night. She remembered the taste of the cheap coffee and the feeling of Alaric's hand over hers. She remembered loving him. But that love felt like a story she had read in a book a long time ago. It didn't hurt anymore. It was just history. She looked up. Preston and Chloe were watching her, concern on their faces. "Is everything okay?" Chloe asked softly. Vivian looked at the letter one last time. She saw the regret, the bitterness, and the begrudging respect. It was the closure she hadn't realized she needed. She took a pen from the table and wrote a single line on the bottom of his yellow page. Not for him to see, she wouldn't mail it, but for herself. Alaric, I didn't push the button to destroy you. I pushed it to save what we built. You just happened to be standing on the trap door. Faye. She walked over to the shredder in the corner of the room. The machine was heavy-duty, designed to destroy sensitive corporate secrets. She fed the letter into the teeth. The machine whirred, a sharp, mechanical grinding sound. She watched Alaric's words turn into confetti. Then she looked at the Polaroid. She hesitated. Should I shred that too? Chloe asked. Vivian looked at the picture of the two young dreamers. No, she said. She tucked the photo into her pocket. Keep the past in your pocket, Chloe, but never let it sit in your chair. She turned back to the window. The sun was high now, reflecting off the steel and glass of the city. Down on the street, millions of people were rushing, fighting, building, and dreaming. She had been one of the invisible ones, the mocked ex-wife, the legacy shareholder, the ghost at the feast. But ghosts don't run billion-dollar companies. Vivian adjusted her blazer. She checked her watch. It was 9:30 a.m. The market was open. The world was waiting. Preston, she said, her voice clear and commanding. Let's go look at those acquisition targets. I think it's time Echo started making some noise. She walked out of the conference room and into the bustling hum of her floor, leaving the empty envelope behind. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The view was better from the front. In a world that worships loud confidence and flashy appearances, it is easy to overlook the quiet power of competence. Alaric Sterling believed his own myth, that he was untouchable, and that the people he stepped on would stay beneath his boot. But he forgot the fundamental law of physics and karma. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Vivian Banks didn't win because she was vindictive. She won because she was prepared. She turned her pain into a plan and her grief into governance. Her story serves as a powerful reminder to never underestimate the person who knows where the bodies and the bylaws are buried. Sometimes the dead weight is the anchor holding the ship together, and when you cut it loose, you don't sail faster. You capsize. Wow, I don't know about you, but seeing Alaric sitting in that puddle while Vivian took over the skyline was the most satisfying thing I've read all year. It just proves that the best revenge isn't screaming, it's succeeding. If you enjoyed this story of hard karma and corporate justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and tells me you want more stories like this. Do you think Vivian let Alaric off too easy? Or did he get exactly what he deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new story. We have a crazy tale coming up next week about a cheating husband who didn't realize his wife owned the lottery ticket he tried to steal. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind or be careful. Karma is always watching. See you in the next video.